All right, guys, welcome back to the MMA Unhinged podcast. Yeah, again, I'm joined by Oscar Silva over there in America, and this is a very, very special episode to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the 2021 UFC MMA Awards, whatever. There could be Bellator thrown in there, but this is the MMA Award show, and this is 2021. A big, big episode. We're going to recap 2021, talk about who we think will fight of the year, KO of the year, submission of the year. This is probably the most important episode of the year.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of people handing out rewards as of late, including the great Ariel Helwani. But I personally think that few people have done the amount of research that we have when it comes to determining who wins these awards. There are no fights this Saturday. Yeah, it's a bummer. It's been like that the past 2 weeks. But we're going to tough it out, and we're going to continue to provide content for you guys this week with this award show. And we've had a good amount of time to reflect on this. As I've said, people have already been handing out awards for the past 2 weeks, and we really thought it out this time, and I think we're ready to start off with the first category. We have 11 categories, and we will be starting out with Knockout of the Year. All right, Lenny, what would you consider to be your nominees for Knockout of the Year?
I think knockout of the year. First off, I think it's got to be Rose Namajunas against Weili Zhang. The first fight. I think the moment that she was in, trying to retain that belt back, the occasion and the way she done it as well. She shocked the world once again. And I think that, in my eyes, I think that's knockout of the year. I think the occasion adds to it. How she done it as well, and I feel like that's definitely the one that I believe is knockout of the year.
Yeah, the thing with the knockout of the year that I usually like to specify is I like my knockouts to be clean, squeaky clean. I like when a guy or a girl gets hit, I like them to be completely out, really no ground and pound necessary, and there was ground and pound necessary. That's why it's not included. But if you want to talk about just amazing finishes, that's 100% on there. It's one of the most shocking moments of the year. Xiangwei Lee was in one of the craziest wars we've ever seen the octagon. We were thinking she was maybe one of the most durable fighters of all time, and she gets put out in under a minute and 30 seconds. So my jaw was completely on the floor. That was an absolutely shocking moment, but I'm going to have to disagree with you, and I'm actually going with Corey Sandhagen's 30-second flying knee KO against Frank Edgar. Was it heartbreaking to watch? Of course it was. I love Frankie. It appears he's not as durable as he once was, but you have to appreciate the precision of that knockout. Corey Sandhagen knew that Frankie Edgar is the type to always move forward, and he timed it perfectly, and no ground and pound was necessary whatsoever. He just moved out of the way of Frankie Edgar's lifeless body, and wow, it was a complete stunner of a knockout. And Dominic Cruz, who's in the division, who does not benefit from saying this, he went ahead and said, that's a title shot. That's a title shot. Dominic Cruz could not be more impressed. Arguably the greatest bantamweight to ever fight in the octagon, and he's out there saying that should get you a title shot. So for that reason, I will go with Corey Sandhagen's flying knee KO. Another cool one to mention, of course, is Dominic Reyes getting a brutal spinning back elbow from Yuri Prohaska. That was absolutely brutal. But yeah, that's definitely up there for me, but I think that Corey Sandhagen flying knee is just next level.
I mean, we've got a lot of honorable mentions as well. We got Barkley versus Impa.
That was actually 2020 October.
Oh my God, no, Jorge Masvidal, no, yeah, Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman. We had the Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza, and obviously, if you watched Mamed Khalidov versus Scott Askham over in KSW, that was also a fantastic knockout. It was like a flying switch kick. It was incredible.
Yeah, over in Bellator, how could we not mention Sergio Pettis' spinning back against Kyoji Horiguchi? That was absolutely wild. What a crazy comeback, but we'll talk about comebacks later. Next up, we'll move on to the 2021 submission of the year. I'll start off by saying what my favorite submission of the year was, what I truly think receives the crown. It's very hard to pick, but at the end of the day, I'm actually going to go with Andre Muniz's inverted armbar against Jacare Souza. This was a very difficult category to pick this year, but the fact that Jacare Souza had never been submitted in a mixed martial arts bout, and Andre Muniz goes out there and not only submits him, but breaks his arm. It sounded like a carrot was getting cut in the octagon. It was absolutely brutal. And Andre Muniz, before in the fighter meetings, he actually said, I'm going to submit this guy. I'm a better grappler. And I remember John Anik and DC were clowning him on commentary. They were saying, that's absolutely ridiculous. And before they knew it, Jacare Souza was on his knees, holding his arm just flaying around. That was wild. Jacare Souza is unbelievably tough. And not only that, that was actually Jacare Souza's retirement bout. So he completely finished Jacare Souza that night and left no doubt that he's one of the best grapplers in the middleweight division.
You mentioned there it was absolutely insanity, that submission, but I don't know how you could forget the Anthony Hernandez versus Rafael Vieira.
Yeah.
I think that's my submission of the year. I mean, Anthony Smith submitting a crazy black belt in Vieira. Was it I can't remember, was it a 7-time Brazilian,
5 times.
There we go, 5-time Brazilian jiu-jitsu champion, and he submits him. It was crazy, and that moment there, just that will be forever just in my head, because I'll replay it over and over again because it was such a brilliant moment. I loved every minute of it, and I just feel like you just don't see that happen in MMA a lot, and I feel like that has to be submission of the year for me, and it was bananas.
Yeah, he was an 80cc gold medalist. That's about as good as you get when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what's very interesting about this one for me in particular was I actually had a parlay bet of Rodolfo Vieira winning by submission. I parlayed it with Bilal Muhammad winning by decision against who was it, Diego Lima. And Bilal Muhammad went out there and dominated, got it done. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Rodolfo Vieira gets a takedown. He's going to submit him right away. Nope. Anthony Hernandez had Greco-Roman Division I wrestlers in his camp. He had jiu-jitsu, like 5th degree jiu-jitsu black belts in his camp. This guy was well prepared for it, and he was able to escape the submission attempts because Rodolfo Vieira was very much submission over position in that fight. Did not really care for Anthony Hernandez's BJJ defense, and that cost him. He completely gassed, and at the very end of that first round, the guy was toast. He was eating big shots, and come the second round, he hits a big head kick, and he shoots in for a takedown. And Anthony Hernandez probably could have gotten any submission he wanted in that moment because the guy was that defenseless with his endurance just having abandoned him. So he went for an arm-in guillotine, and Rodolfo Vieira tapped out. I expected Rodolfo Vieira to have too much pride to tap in that moment, honestly. Like, Anthony Hernandez, if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think he's a black belt. So he went out there and tapped like one of the best black belts there are on this planet, and he did it in epic fashion. That was definitely in my second place, but the optics of the broken arm for Nunes, that definitely took the cake for me. What would be your honorable mentions?
Well, we have Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill as well. I think that was a good one.
I saw some people nominating that. That was actually declared a TKO. That's why I didn't include it. Remember, because even though obviously it was a submission in the moment, when the arm gets broken, it's over. But the referee was so terrible, he actually declared it a TKO. Because remember, Paul Craig was landing punches. He actually whipped it off because of that.
Oh, okay. We also got AJ Mckee versus Darren Coldwell.
It was this year?
Yeah, it was like a neck crank.
Oh, yeah. I had a Mckee submission on here as well. It was actually his submission of Pitbull, that standing guillotine after landing the head kick. That was absolutely epic. It couldn't have gone better for him that night. But if you want to talk about other submissions out there that I believe should be in this conversation, I really was impressed with Amanda Nunes. She got a submission against Megan Anderson. It was a reverse triangle armbar. I actually saw Hinto Gracie's breakdown of this, and it's pretty high level to be able to pull that off in the octagon. Even Megan Anderson's ground game is subpar at best. She was able to get a really complex submission on her in a title fight. just a couple minutes into the first round. So that definitely deserves an honorable mention for me.
100%. It was a fantastic gear. Could you do me a favor, Oscar?
Yeah, you're a little you're buzzing a little on your side.
Yeah, you're buzzing as well.
I'd wonder whose side it is on.
Yeah, that 2 secs.
All right.
Can you hear it now?
I do.
You can hear it. Oh, okay. We might have. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm not sure. But shall we move on?
I guess so. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
The next category is the comeback of the year. There was a lot of great comebacks out there, and in my opinion, there's no better comeback out there than Merab Dvalishvili's second round TKO victory over Marlon Moraes. This was crazy that Merab survived this. Heading into this fight, Merab Dvalishvili was a huge favorite. Everybody was picking him with great confidence. And although I did pick Merab Dvalishvili, I was very tempted to bet Marlon Moraes by first round KO, because if you know the story of Marlon Moraes, the guy is an absolute killer in the first round. He'll beat Henry Cejudo in the first round. He'll beat Aldo in the first round. But after that, he doesn't perform as well. So I definitely gave Marlon a chance to finish Merab early, and he nearly did. He knocked down Merab twice, I believe. He hurt him so bad. I was very sure that the fight would get stopped, especially since Keith Peterson was the ref. He stopped the Cruz versus Cejudo fight, that controversial finish. So I was definitely thinking that the fight was about to be stopped. But once Merab got to his feet and refused to quit, he got a takedown off of fatigued Marlon Moraes, a complete gas Marlon Moraes, and he proceeded to land about 150 unanswered strikes. This was a complete beatdown. And in the moment, it actually looked like he may have knocked out Marlon Moraes with some of the strikes. Marlon Moraes went pretty limp for a little bit there. So it was so impressive. Merab has the right nickname. He's the machine. And this was my comeback of the year for me.
Yeah, and that's the exact same for me. I feel like there's not a close second. We have Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, but I feel like the way it went down, I think Merab has got to take that, and it was a fantastic comeback. I enjoyed it a lot, and the way he took all them shots, and as you mentioned, one shot and he could have been limp.
I can still hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What we might have to do is you might have to join, leave, then join back. See if that works. And then if you still do it, then I'll leave and join back.
All right.
A little technical problem. It happens every single week. You know, there's never a show that can go smooth. Never. But you know, we shall move on. But as mentioned, Merab Dvalishvili taking all them shots against Marlon Moraes, it's phenomenal. The way he was being able to take them and still coming on, and that machine is a perfect nickname, very fitting to be able to, you know, just against Marlon Moraes as well, who's desperate for a win. He would have done anything in that octagon to land that perfect shot, and he did land them good shots. But you know, Merab showing that, you know, he has got that durability in him to, you know, hang with the top guys at the top. It'll be interesting to see where Merab goes from here. It'll be a big one for him next. Maybe Merab versus Cruz. That would be a good one. But in a worse position, obviously, you got Marlon Moraes. It's 3 in a row for him now after losing to Henry Cejudo. He's just gone on a bit of a downfall. But Marlon Moraes is always a game fighter, and if he's if an MMA fight was one round only, he would be up there with the best. But it's kudos to Merab to hanging on and doing what he does best. It was phenomenal. But it was a fantastic comeback. I'm not too sure what the next one is. Here we have Oscar back. Hello.
All right. Not hearing any of the static. It appears we're all good now.
That is good.
Did you name your comeback of the year?
My comeback year was the exact same as you. It would have been Marab Divishvili versus Marlon Moraes. I feel like there's no other option.
Had you moved on to another category?
No, I was waiting for you, but not yet.
Oh, well, I would just like to shout out Nate Menace versus Tony Gravely. I don't know if you remember that one, but in the first round, Nate Menace was saved by the bell. I'll say it straight up now. I knew Nate Menace was going to see that post because he made it known that he wanted to be in the conversation for comeback of the year. But yeah, the guy was straight up saved by the bell. Tony Gravely would have finished that fight had he had 5 more seconds. But he makes it to the second round and he knocks out Tony Gravely himself. I could not be more impressed by that one. Also, this one happened a couple weeks ago. It's definitely worth mentioning. Clay Guido versus Leonardo Santos. I was actually angry at the ref in the moment. I was like, why isn't he stopping this fight? And Clay Guido goes out there and gets a submission over another ADCC champion out there. So yeah, crazy year for submissions and comebacks. So we'll move on to the next category now. I believe the next category
His
is,
breakout fighter of the year.
oh boy, this is definitely a very interesting category. I feel like we saw a lot of new blood injected to the UFC this year. But I have a little different criteria than most people. Some people like to include UFC debutants. I do not include debutants. I include people that were already in the UFC and they really elevated their status. Like most of these people that I'm going to name are people that were not even in the rankings, but they were already in the UFC. So my breakout fighter of the year in particular is actually going to be Sean Brady. Sean Brady at the end of 2020 was an undefeated prospect, a guy on the rise, getting really great submissions against the likes of Christian Oliveira, Aguilera. And in 2021, he fights a guy who's unranked as well in Jake Matthews, and he completely dominates the fight. And in the third round, gets an arm triangle finish. And after that, people were so impressed by him that they were ready to have him face off a guy like Kevin Lee. The Kevin Lee fight doesn't materialize. Then he goes ahead and fights Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa, let me remind you, Michael Chiesa was number 6 in the world. And his previous fight was Jake Matthews, a guy that's not even ranked. So it's a huge step up in competition. And he goes out there and he ragdolls Michael Chiesa. Sure, was he hurt bad on the feet? Of course he was. He was also tired. But he goes out there and truly throws around Michael Chiesa, who is known for throwing people around. And he does it in impressive fashion. And now he finds himself in the top 10 of the welterweight division, which is very hard to move up in. So for that reason, I will pick Sean Brady. The guy had a huge step up. He really broke out into the top 10.
Someone else will, well, my breakout fighter of the year, someone else who also broke into the top 10. It'll be the big Liverpudlian from, like, actually, he's from Wigan, Tom Aspinall. I think the heavyweight breaking through into the rankings. And there's still a lot to come from him. I feel like he really put himself on the map this year. He's got a big 2022 ahead of him. He's got some big fights, but I feel like 2021, he really, really put himself on the map, just like just like Chris Dawkins as well. If Chris Dawkins beat Derek Lewis, I feel like we could be talking about him right now.
Yeah, Tom Aspinall, he started out the year with a win over Andrei Arlovsky, the former UFC champion, a guy who is a true gatekeeper at this point in his career. But the impressive thing these days about him is he's not letting people through the gate quite often. It's actually been, he doesn't lose a ton, actually. He's actually on a winning streak now, and he beat Andrei Arlovsky, and he did it via submission. When was the last time you see an Andrei Arlovsky get submitted? So he showed that he had a multifaceted game. He showed off that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And yeah, he did it against bona fide Hall of Famer, the guy with the most heavyweight wins in UFC history. So that's definitely impressive. Then after that, he goes out there as a huge favorite against Sergey Spivak. And there was a lot of people in the betting community that actually picked Spivak to win. They thought maybe Aspinall will have a little bit of a longer fight this time around. This was not a long fight. He steamrolled Spivak in epic fashion. That was something that Tai Tuivasa couldn't do himself. So I was very impressed with Tom Aspinall this year, and it appears he has set himself up with a fight against a really a grizzled vet in Shamil Durahima that is being targeted for the UFC London card, hopefully on March 19th.
100%. Hopefully to see the big man back in action, and it would be great to see him back in London as well. So back in London in the UFC as well. So
Yeah.
that would be good. And next one, we've got event of the year.
Oh boy, this year for events, in my opinion, 2021 is definitely in the top 5 for best years in UFC history. There's so much to be grateful for when it came to events this year. The UFC really, especially since fans came back, the UFC went out of their way to stack cards. Even if a card already had 2 title fights, they would sneak in a Diaz brother fighting on the card just to get more excitement going for the card, and it really paid off. Uh, I truly believe that the conversation is very difficult for this one. It truly comes down to personal preference, but my personal preference is UFC 268, Usman versus Covington 2. This was a super stacked card to begin with. So stacked they had Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler as the first fight on the main card, and boy was it a fight. And I'll just spoil it now. This was my fight of the year, and it also had a nomination for round of the year. It doesn't get any crazier than that fight. And then they went after that fight with another banger of a fight with Shane Burgos versus Billy Quarantillo. Another amazing fight, one of my favorite fights of the year. And then after that, we have Marlon Vera knocking out Frank Yeager, another sad Frank Yeager knockout, but still really cool moment. Then we have an ultra competitive title fight between Xiangwei Lee and Nunes. And then we have another war between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Usman cementing his legacy, and that was just a crazy way to kick it off. And did I forget to mention the 5 back-to-back KOs on the prelims? This was such a fun event to watch if you were watching it live.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed UFC 261. It was 268. I mean, I think I just gave my answer away there. For God's sake. But yeah, 268 was a phenomenal event. As you mentioned, Usman versus Covington at the top of the bill as well, and Covington taking a different, what word am I looking for? A different
approach.
There we go, approach for this fight. But it was still a hard fight for Usman. But nonetheless, our picks both have Usman in it. So whatever happens, Usman's had a fantastic year this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, UFC 261 for me, Usman versus Masvidal 2. I feel like the stage. What was it? I think Jorge Masvidal stepping in at short notice. I believe that was the event.
It was kind of a short notice for both guys. Remember, it was kind of all sudden. It was like a month and a half or 2 months that the guys had to prepare.
Well, there we go. And then we have Rose Namajunas. Obviously, I talked about her earlier, knocking out Weili Zhang in round 1 with that phenomenal head kick. Then Valentina Shevchenko defending her belt, doing what she does. Uriah Hall, that, and Chris Weidman, the leg break. Yes, it's not a very good moment, but it kind of made the event. I don't know.
Yeah, crazier. It just added to the craziness of the event. That I truly believed after that I would not be like as shocked by anything after that, but somehow I continued to be shocked. And before that fight, we also had Anthony Smith defeating
Jimmy Crute.
Jimmy Crute was getting pieced up by the jab. He was getting destroyed by those calf kicks. His leg went numb. He had a little bit of drop foot there. And yeah, we had 2 leg injuries to kick off that card. It was an actually absolutely crazy card. But one of my favorite moments of that card was actually the first fight of the night, which is actually pretty rare. And it was Nali versus Ariana Coglianosi. I don't think most people knew who those 2 were, but it didn't matter. It was just the fact that those people were there in person to witness a live fight. And they could not be more excited when they saw that the fight was going to happen. Both women had huge ovations walking out, and they definitely fired them up. So fired up that Nali Yang scored a knockdown in the first 3 seconds, and both women just had a straight-up war, and the crowd was super into it. They're never really into the first fight of the night because it's usually unestablished names. But the fact that the fans were back, it gave me goosebumps. It was such an amazing card, full of amazing moments I will remember for years to come. Other cards that were absolutely spectacular, UFC 269. It was just in December, but we're talking about 9 finishes here. They gave away 8 bonuses that night. That's how great that card was. We had the great Cruz versus Munoz fight, the Pena upset, the Oliveira win over Poirier, really great card. Also, UFC 266, Volkanovsky versus Ortega. That had 8 finishes. That had the Dvalishvili versus Moraes fight. That had the great Volkanovsky-Ortega fight and the return to Nick Diaz. It was just a really good card.
100%. As you were mentioning there, the last card, last pay-per-view of the year as well, 269, it was like, it just made it more like this is the last one and the last pay-per-view we're going to see this year. So it made it more feel bigger, should we say. But it was a fantastic card. I loved it. And the way we went off, it was phenomenal. I feel like that pay-per-view is kind of setting up the year 2022 because they've got to come out big, come out strong. And I feel like they will because we've got a big one coming up. So we'll get to that once we get to that.
Gan versus Ngannou, that is an absolutely crazy fight. And we had a crazy moment on that UFC 269 card. The upset to end all upsets, if you would call them. We're going to move on to upset of the year. This is the
there's only one pick
winner there is. This is just so easy. Juliana Peña's second round submission over Amanda Nunes is one of the craziest moments I've ever witnessed. And it is obviously the best upset of the year. Amanda Nunes had 8 consecutive victories in UFC title fights before this. It appears she was unstoppable. She would always be a minus 1,000 favorite heading to her fights. It was a foregone conclusion, even on this show, that she would go out there and she would win. But her ugly past, it really reared up on her. She gassed out. She quit in there. She let the anxiety get to her. And Juliana Peña did not fold in the moment. Even though she was eating huge shots, she was rocked herself. She refused to quit. And she got that takedown. And she submitted Nunes. It's a moment that I truly never thought I would see. So to go out there and see it, it's like seeing a unicorn prancing on your lawn. You never thought you would see it. When you see it, you really can't believe it.
100%, and we're looking forward to the rematch this year. It's going to be huge, and I feel like this is what the division needed: a challenger to give Nunes that competition, and I can't wait for it, honestly. And my pick was also Nunes versus Peña. I feel like it's just the obvious pick, and I can't see anyone else coming anywhere near to that. Nunes being declared as the greatest woman of all time in MMA, and Peña doing what said she was going to do. And she's been talking about beating Amanda Nunes since UFC 200. Yeah. And she finally does it.
Yeah, that's true self-belief right there. She truly manifested that moment. She always had this thought in her head. Even though it seemed silly in the moment, she just stuck with it, and she went out there and accomplished it as a huge underdog. If you bet $100 on her, you would have gotten $750 back. That's just a great investment in Juliana Peña. So that rematch is going to be very, very interesting. That's probably the most interesting Amanda Nunes fight we're going to have since like the Holly Holm fight. So that's going to be very intriguing. Sure, are these upsets anywhere close to him? No, but they're worth mentioning. Dustin Poirier knocking out Conor McGregor. That was a true jaw dropper for me because Conor McGregor's durability never really questioned before this, and he straight up got slept that night. Also, Gerald Meerschaert versus Magomed Muradov. If you remember that, everybody thought Magomed would steamroll Gerald, and Gerald stuck it through and got the win. Also, Glover Teixeira. Even though he was a pretty sizable underdog, but at 42, you're just not supposed to become champion, and for him to win, very impressive.
Unless your name's Randy Couture or Daniel Cormier, you're just not meant to be champion.
Yeah, you're just not meant to be champion, and goes out there and does it. And in my opinion, I think he can have at least one title defense.
100%, and he's got a tough one. I presume it'll be against Yuri Prochazka, and I presume it'll also be in Brazil in that pay-per-view.
Yeah, that Brazilian pay-per-view is going to be something special. I just saw that Miocic versus Verdun pay-per-view. They had 45,000 screaming fans in there. I hope...
And they're all screaming the same thing, but it gives you goosebumps.
Yeah, absolutely wild. That was... and it all sold out in one day, so we know Brazil's a really great market for them. And hopefully they can have an environment at least similar to that.
100%. It was fantastic. And that kind of leads us on to our next topic, the feel-good moment of the year.
Oh, boy. There was a lot of people becoming first-time champions this year. A lot of people that, as we just said with Glover Teixeira, Lenny has left us. I'll just
No, I'm still here.
talking. Oh, you're still here. There was a lot of people that we really didn't believe had a chance to become champion, say 3 years ago. Charles Oliveira, Juliana Pena, Glover Teixeira. Even at some point, some people were really doubting Rose Namajunas, but it's so hard to pick this one, honestly. As I said, just like with the event of the year, it's about personal preference. But at the end of the day, I'm actually going to be ending up going with Glover Teixeira. This was such a tough one to pick, as I said. Brandon Moreno is definitely my second place, but Glover Teixeira, at 42 years of age, telling people out there that they can do whatever they believe they can do, and going out there and actually proving that it's true, it's just so inspiring. And man, it truly was a feel good moment for me. He went out there with his idol, Big Nog, and just hugged them, and it was just a really special moment for me. Defeating Jan Blachowicz via second round submission, and he pretty much dominated that fight too. So really didn't take much damage out there and got it done. But Brandon Moreno winning that belt against Davidson Figueiredo, definitely worth mentioning. The guy himself cried as well. So many great moments out there. Also, Francis Ngannou becoming the first-time champion after a year, after so much inactivity and so many challenges in his life. It was full of great title wins, and honestly, I feel like the title wins are always the best feel-good moments of the year.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned there phenomenal nominations. But yeah, the Brandon Moreno one, I feel like that one's going to really stick in my head for years to come. Being being a Mexican champion, bringing Mexico a champion once again after all them years of not having a champion. What the last champion would have been Cain Velasquez, I believe, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Probably Cain Velasquez. That at least that was the most major one.
And the story as well for Brandon Moreno. He got cut from the UFC and made his way back into the UFC and worked his way back up the ladder and got to the top. And his post-fight speech, you mentioned Glover's, but Brandon Moreno, I feel like he really touched everyone in that post-fight speech. It was incredible. He's trying not to cry, but he's telling everyone to never give up on your dreams, and it's incredible. It's just, this is why we love the sport of MMA. It's incredible.
Yeah. I don't think you get moments like this because the athletes are not taking the kind of physical punishment that they're taking in the sport. So it means that much more when they actually get it done.
100%. And as you mentioned, the nominations, Glover Teixeira, him finally getting the belt. Francis Ngannou avenging his loss against Stipe Miocic and getting the belt. We had so many feel-good moments this year. It was incredible.
Yeah, Charles Oliveira, I think in particular, kind of the guy that displayed his happiness the most. The guy was dancing around with the belt. The guy was shedding tears of joy, just hugging everybody he could find. It was a really cool moment as well. But I guess we'll move on to the next category.
Yeah, 100%. Take it away. Which is round of the year.
Round of the year. This is definitely another one that is hotly contested. I'm going back and forth on this a lot, but at the end of the day, I'm actually going to go with Alexander Volkanovsky versus Brian Ortega, round 3. This round was as crazy as it gets. And usually when it comes to round of the years, it's a situation where a guy is knocked down or just beat up really bad. And sure, Brian Ortega definitely took a lot of damage. But the story of this round was Alexander Volkanovsky being put in very tight submissions, not once but twice, by Brian Ortega, who was one of the best grapplers in all of the UFC. Gracie trained for over a decade, and he gets a mounted guillotine on him, and we see Alexander Volkanovski's head turning red and purple, and I was 100% sure it was over. I was like, all right, it's sealed, it's a wrap. And somehow he pops his head out. That is unbelievable submission defense by Volkanovski. And then he goes ahead and he starts raining down ground and pound. And the entire time I was like, what are you doing? You're going to get caught in another submission. And he gets caught in a triangle. And then DC was like, it's over. It's over. I thought it was over again. And then he pops out of it. And then he starts raining vicious ground and pound. And Brian Ortega can barely get up at the end of the round. That was an absolute madness of a round. I can't even. It's one of the best rounds I've ever seen. And yeah, just one of many this year.
It was wild as well. I got to admit, but I feel like the Gaethje versus Chandler, that fight it's just phenomenal. All 15 minutes of just reckless abandonment. It was crazy.
Which round are you nominating from that fight?
Round 1.
Yes, I agree. That was an absolute bananas round. You could tell both guys didn't really come in there with the intentions of winning. They came in with the intentions of entertaining and just hoping to get that knockout.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I feel like when these two are fighting, it's just like, if I get knocked out, as you mentioned, if I get knocked out, I get knocked out.
Yeah, and here's the thing that really stood out to me from that round in particular was Charles Oliveira had knocked out Michael Chandler just a couple months before that. So I was definitely doubting Michael Chandler's durability. He has been knocked out on multiple occasions, and Justin Gaethje, as Habib has now titled him, he's the hardest hitter in the lightweight division. And for Michael Chandler to eat those bombs, it was just really impressive. And but I actually scored that round as most people did. I actually scored that first round for Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler actually had the bigger moments. And not only did he stun Gaethje with his punches, he actually really tore up Justin Gaethje's leg with a couple leg kicks. Justin Gaethje actually told him after the fight, you destroyed my leg with that leg kick, man. He was actually really impressed by his leg kicks in that round. That was absolutely madness. It was the highest output that those men had in that fight. So, yeah, that definitely, it's a very close second place.
That's it. If Michael Chandler had enough in the tank for that round 2, we could be talking about Michael Chandler winning that fight.
Yeah, that's a true possibility. I would love to see a rematch someday.
Michael Chandler needs to get a win, though.
Yeah, sure. Maybe Tony Ferguson could be lined up for him. But let me also shout out the Merab Dvalishvili versus Marlon Moraes round 1. That this keeps on getting mentioned because it truly deserves to get mentioned this many times on the award show. One of the craziest sequences we've seen the entire year. And I'll also shout out the first round of Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. That was a wild round. Those guys had they had an insane output, and at the end of the day, Dustin himself was tired. Dustin has taken a 5th round off of Max Holloway. So for Dustin Poirier, who was an amazing gas tank, to be tired at the end of the round, those guys really went for it.
100%. And I'm going to go back to here, Chandler versus Gaethje. I feel like that's the fight of the year in my eyes. Round of the year, fight of the year. 15 minutes of just, as I mentioned, reckless abandonment. They went out there to knock each other out for 15 minutes, and it didn't happen. It was close to happening in that round number 2, when Gaethje landed that huge uppercut down the middle, and just Chandler still managed to get to his feet. Is incredible. But yeah, I think that's my fight of the year. Chandler versus Gaethje. Them two men put on an absolute war for us, and it was a fantastic entertainment.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I already spoiled the winner of the award for that. There's no doubt that those two guys they left it all in the octagon that night. A little piece of them was left in that octagon in Madison Square Garden when they walked out. Michael Chandler was unrecognizable after the fight. The punishment those two guys took, and just, if you want to talk about the definition of battle tested, those two guys are battle tested. Yeah, I'll never forget that fight. And my jaw was on the floor for a good 10 minutes in that fight. It was absolutely stunning. And some other fights worth mentioning are, as I just said, the best round of the year was Ortega versus Volkanovsky round 3. And that fight, the entire fight was good. Were the first 2 rounds pretty, decisive for Volkanovsky? Yes, they were. But Ortega just took big shots. And it ended up catching up to him. But he still fought through it. And I actually scored the 5th round for Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega actually got a couple good shots going. So yeah, just they truly showed off their warrior spirit in that moment. When both guys easily could have quit, they did not, and that's why it's a nominee for me.
And an additional award, shall we say, for walkout of the year, Brian Ortega, when he entered with that purge, the theme tune walking out, that really gave me goosebumps leading up to the fight. It was incredible.
Without a doubt, it's very few occasions where we see the fighters get a little creative with the walkout. So to see the guys walking out with the masks with special purge music, it definitely stood out.
100%. So we'll move on to our next category, which is the all important one. So would you like to go for female fighter of the year or male fighter of the year for the last two?
We'll save female fighter after male fighter.
Okay, so I'll go first. So, the nominees, what we've got: Valentina Shevchenko, Juliana Pena, Rose Namajunas. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. But that's the ones I've got here. So my pick was Valentina Shevchenko, defending the belt, reclaiming the belt, just being dominant, just being Shevchenko. And if Nunes did beat Pena, I'd be talking about Nunes once again for a second year in a row. But I feel like Shevchenko, I don't see anyone beating her at the moment. But we said that with Nunes and Pena, but I seriously don't see anyone beating Shevchenko. And I feel like that's what I'm going to see that for a very long time. I see Shevchenko retiring as the champion. And what she conquered this year is she's always going one up from herself. 2020 was a good year for Shevchenko, but 2021 was an even better year. And I feel like she's got a big 2022, and she's continuing to go up in the world. But I know who Oscar's going to pick.
Yeah, it's very hard to go wrong by picking Valentina Shevchenko in pretty much any situation. She's so impressive with what she does. And if you really want to talk about if your criteria was based off like perfection, near perfection, that was Valentina Shevchenko. She dominates Jessica Andrade, where Jessica Andrade is strongest. She muscles her to the ground, gets ground pound going. In the second round, she TKOs her and finishes her, which is very hard to do. And then after that, she goes out there against Lauren Murphy. And Lauren Murphy, I believe, landed like 13 total strikes. She made Lauren Murphy look silly out there. Lauren Murphy was clueless out there. And then she finishes Lauren Murphy in the fourth round. So Valentina Shevchenko almost had an effortless year. So going with her is completely understandable. But if you want to talk about names on the resume, I'll go with Juliana Pena. In her first fight of the year, she fought Sarah McMahon in January over in Abu Dhabi on that first Dustin versus Connor rematch fight, and she was not winning the fight. I'll be honest. It was a very competitive fight. I actually picked Sarah McMahon to win, but eventually she got that rear naked choke on Sarah McMahon, and Sarah McMahon tapped, and that earned her the title shot. Not only that, but the post-fight interview, she called out Nunes. She truly believed she could beat her, and we all made fun of her. I'll be honest, we all made fun of her. And then she goes out there and ends the year. She goes from the first month of the year to the last month of the year, fights the greatest of all time. We really give her no chance, and she beats her. And that's why I will declare her the female fighter of the year, because there's not a single name in these nominees that is better than Amanda Nunes. The resume is so impressive. Having Amanda Nunes on your resume is something that nobody has been able to say since 2015 or 2014. So yeah, for Pena to have the name on there, it's definitely impressive, and that's why I'm going to give it to her.
Mm-hmm. And that win with Julia Pena beating Amanda Nunes, that's a fight that's going to go down in history. It's going to be played in UFC pay-per-views 10 years to come, 20 years to come. Joe Rogan, well, I don't know if Joe Rogan will still be there, but the commentators at that time are going to go back and think about when Julia Pena beat Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, another name worth mentioning, who did get 3 victories, and with 2 of them being in main event slots, was Marina Rodriguez. Marina Rodriguez has gotten on a really good run after losing to Carla Esparza in 2020. She went out there and started the year by finishing Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas was a pretty big favorite. A lot of people thought she was ready for a title shot, but she steamrolls Amanda Ribas, and then she gets a main event against Michelle Waterson, and she pretty much dominates Michelle Waterson. And then she fights Mackenzie Dern, and she made Mackenzie Dern look silly on the field. Let's be honest. She really exposed that there were definite holes in that the Mackenzie Dern stand up tape. And on the ground, she was able to survive. Don't forget, Mackenzie Dern had serious top position for a long time, and she survived. So for that to transpire for Marie Rodriguez that long, it's really impressive. And she's definitely had one of the best years.
Good composure, Oscar. I like it. Swiftly moving on. That was good. But swiftly move on to male fighter of the year. Pretty much, we had some good fighters this year. And, Kamaru Usman was up there. Islam Makhachev, Cyril Gane had a fantastic year. But for me, I think it's going to be Kamaru Usman. The year he had, I feel like I talked about Valentina Shevchenko when her 2021 was good. 2020 was good, and her 2021 was better. But Kamaru Usman is going up and up and up, and that his 2021 was fantastic, knocking out Jorge Masvidal and the fashion he did, and just it was that knockout will be replayed so many times. It was a violent knockout, knocking out a guy like Jorge Masvidal, who's known to putting people out cold, and doing it the way he did is phenomenal. And then obviously rematching Colby Covington, his toughest fight to date. And then going for another, war, 25-minute war. It just proves that them two are just inseparable. I can't think of that word. Can you think of the word? Inseparable? Inseparable.
Yeah, inseparable. I would say that, yeah.
There we go. It proves that they're inseparable. They're like, look into a mirror. I would say that's the closest we get to them fighting each other, but Colby Covington unfortunately has to be in the same division as Kamaru Usman and fighting at the same time as him. So I'm going to choose Kamaru Usman. I feel like he's the male fighter of the year.
And I would have to agree with you. For these awards, I always reward activity. If somebody got a really good win, it was just one win. I'm not really going to consider them if they didn't have multiple fights, because it's very hard to have consistency in the MMA game. It's just very hard. Some people, that's why Khabib Nurmagomedov is so celebrated, because the guy was consistently winning out there. So yeah, that's why I'm going with Kamaru Usman. Started out the year in February. He had a fight against his former teammate Gilbert Burns, and there was a lot of sources from ATT and from the Florida game, from the guys over in Florida that trained with both guys, saw both guys spar, and they were all picking Gilbert. They were saying that Gilbert was beating up Kamaru Usman in the sparring rounds, and I kind of bought into that a little bit, but I still pick Kamaru Usman because Kamaru Usman is far more established, and Kamaru Usman gets tagged in that first round. I thought that Gilbert Burns was going to win that fight after he rocked him, but we saw Kamaru Usman make a real comeback after and just piece him up with the jab and get the finish there against Gilbert Burns. So that was a true challenge for him. And then he goes out there against Jorge Masvidal. And Jorge Masvidal, his durability has never been questioned. It's really never been questioned. He's been TKO'd a decade ago, but it really doesn't matter. Never got put out in this fashion. It was absolutely brutal. The guy was out cold. He was stiff as a board, just like Askren was. And that was so impressive. One of the best knockouts of the year. And then he fights Colby Covington, who some people still thought Colby could win the fight if it was the right night. And yeah, he really proved himself that night because he got 2 knockdowns in that second round. I thought he was going to finish Colby Covington right then and there, but he did not. But still did it really impressively. And as I said, 3 victories in title fights this year. That's very hard to do. Not many have done it, and he surely did it. Somebody else who had a serious success in multiple title fights was Charles Oliveira. He knocked out Michael Chandler. We said how hard that is to do after a really tough first round too. And then he goes out there as an underdog and submits Dustin Poirier in the second round. That was so impressive, and that win right there legitimized his the belt around his waist.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. With your nominees, but the fantastic year for the UFC. Once again, it's phenomenal. We would have done promotion of the year, but I think it's just obvious at this point.
Yeah. Like it's a nonsense to even consider PFL Bellator, especially since I guess you could consider them in other years, but in this year in particular, not a ton. Bellator kind of has their little season. They like to take a lot of breaks, and PFL, they have their season format, so they're not even on for the whole year. So the UFC has been a reliable source for fights on most Saturdays, and it's truly a blast. And when you talk about doing big fights, big events,
every week.
it's not even comparable, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. They do good fights, big fights every week, and as you mentioned, they're just not even comparable. The fighters that they have on the rosters, on their roster, I mean, just no one matches to what they've got. It's ridiculous. They always try and stop a monopoly in the business world. You can't have a monopoly because if there's a monopoly, then it's bad for the environment. But I feel like the UFC is the MMA monopoly.
Yeah, and I kind of feel that that Dana White truly has the best. He has the best intentions when it comes to the future of the sport. The guy has truly invested money into the sport improving. With the UFC PI, a lot of people really don't know the kind of resources the PI offers to its athletes. It offers serious resources. Like they don't have to do that, but they still do, and that's why I believe that if there is going to be a monopoly, this is a fairly good situation because it's not just an evil, corrupt businessman doing it out here. It's Dana White. It's Dana White who actually cares, despite what some people think.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to give a huge shout out as well to the fans watching this. We had a fantastic year this year for the channel. We had some videos that broke out, made us the channel that we are today. 1.74 thousand subscribers strong. We've branched out on the podcast. Oscar came on board, I think, maybe this year. You got to unmute yourself.
There's some bright things in the future for sure. Hopefully, there's some things in the works. I won't disclose that at this moment because I don't want to, jinx myself.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you came on board. It was this year, wasn't it?
Was it this year? I believe it was.
When was our first show?
No, it was last year. We recapped we previewed. No, we recapped UFC 254. Habib versus Gaichi. I remember that. Yeah, that was the first show we did. It was in early November, late October.
Here we go. I'm scrolling down, trying to find. The first one I can see is there. We go. No, I see podcast. I see Gaichi Habib.
Yeah. I remember that was the first show I was on for. We had a little GOAT debate there.
Oh, there we go. That was our first podcast together.
Yeah, it was, and it's been a really good run. We've had people listening to us from all over the world, countries like Tanzania, Sweden, Japan, the United Arab Emirates. It's really cool what we're doing out here. And the last episode we did was actually the most listeners we've had for any episode.
You're talking about Spotify?
No, just overall listeners.
Wow, there we go.
Yep. So also, one thing I would like to mention that Spotify started adding star ratings for podcasts. So I would appreciate if you guys gave us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Not just on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts as well. I hear it helps with the algorithm, helps us get more exposure out there. So I would truly appreciate if any of you guys did that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. But as I was mentioning, thank you for a fantastic year. 2021 was a big year for us at MMAUnhinged, and it was great. 2022 is going to be a big year as well. Definitely some things that we're working on, branching out, becoming more regular, and just having an even better year than 2021. That's what we're looking to do here, and it's a fantastic year. And obviously, thank you, Oscar, for coming in for this journey with me as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, we already know what happens next. on Saturday, January 15th, Keegan Chikaze versus Kater. It's going to be an awesome fight. I cannot wait for it. I've been itching to watch live fights for a very long time, and that's gonna scratch our itch for sure.
100%. How long has it been? Do you know the exact day? How long it's been?
Since we've had live fights, that was December 18th. So it's now January 5th, I believe it is now. January 6th. Yes, January 6th. So we're sitting at, yeah, I'm not great at mental math like
9 days.
But been over 20 days.
Oh.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if it was the 18th and we're now the 15th, so it would be like what, 28 days?
Yeah, along the lines of that.
Off the top of my head. Yeah,
been way too long. And yeah, it'll be so much fun to see live fights. And next week we'll preview you guys that entire fight card. I'll just start by saying I am picking Cater in that spot. A lot of people are counting him out after that tough loss, but I'm not one of those people.
Well, make sure you tune in for the rest of the picks as well. For me and Oscar, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for 2021, and make sure you tune in for that predictions podcast that is happening next week. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you later.